All right. I'd like to start off by saying Barak Yahweh, Ba'ashem Help Shai, Ba'ashem Kodash. Welcome to another live lesson. The name of this one is, just bear with me 1 second. The name of this one is The Clone Tyrone. Now, let me stop. Babylon the Great created YN syndrome. And that's just a term I came up with. And, I was just messing around and, just to see what came up because I was listening to the elder Manat Zakba's video early when I was on my walk. And, he was basically going on how, he was playing some clips of Trump and, how they're talking about cleaning up the streets and sending the National Guard and federalizing the police forces in D.C., so on and so forth, to clean up, their community, so to speak, and get rid of the criminal element. And pretty much that's been the plan the whole time, because this whole situation that was created, with the migrants at the border was a problem that was created by Esau, by the Babylonian government, American government, to then be able to crack down on getting rid of these migrants through legislation, to be able to apply it to a broader sense of any individual in America that these devils consider to be, not that they don't want around. I'm just, for lack of better words, I had a word that came to mind, but it just escaped me. So pretty much, that's what that whole thing was created for. So in essence, they created a whole host of problems, with this whole border crisis, and it was pretty much a problem reaction solution. Create a problem, watch the reaction of the people, and then once the people react, then you already have a solution that you had predetermined before, and then you present the solution, and the people be like, oh yeah, well let's do that, and that's pretty much a playbook, book, playbook play, or however that term goes, that they already established, and they've been doing this for a long time. They've been at it for a long time with the same formula: problem, reaction, solution. And pretty much at the end of the day, this whole migrant situation was pretty much geared to deal with Jake in general, both the southern and the northern kingdom. But they just use that as a pretense, because you got to understand, whenever they need to pass a legislation to do certain things, they have to create a problem, and then that way they can bring in, when they get the reaction, they can bring in a solution that will help them put in place the plans that they wanted to in the first place. But they needed a pretense, and that's what this whole border thing was about. So, as the name of this lesson is, Babylon the Great created YN syndrome, and I typed that in Google just to see what it says, and it says, I typed in, what is young ninja syndrome? There isn't a recognized medical or psychological condition called young ninja syndrome. The term appears in discussion and forums to describe a pattern of behavior observed in some young black men, which can include recklessness, impulsivity, and engagement in criminal activities. Why? Because this is the way they were brought up. This is what they were fed from the womb to the tomb. So that's pretty much how they set it up. And this has been pretty much an assembly line. And we've been saying that, Elder Apostle Rakas says all the time that the movie They Cloned Tyrone was nothing more than a documentary. And I concur, because it shows you how these devils set up this system, and everything that you see in it, from the things that you eat to the things that you put in your hair, on your body, everything, you know, and how it alters, you know, your mindset, because you have a lot of things that you eat, chemicals and stuff that disrupt the natural function of the body. And I'm not a doctor, I'm not giving medical advice. I'm just sharing some information that I've learned. All right. It says the term is problematic and potentially offensive. The term uses a racial slur and should be avoided. It generalizes about a group of people based on negative stereotypes. It overlooks the complex factors that contribute to individuals' choices and behaviors. Yeah, and when you speak on that the environment that you were brought in, like there's a term called the product of my environment, and you speak about that, they'll say, well, that's just an excuse. No, well, if you bring up somebody in that environment, what the fuck do you think is going to happen? How do you think they're going to turn out? It says, such as socioeconomic hardships, lack of opportunities, and societal biases, which was already set up that way. That's why they call it systemic racism. Instead of focusing on a stigmatizing label, it is more constructive to address the root causes of the challenges faced by some young black men and to promote positive development and social change. Yeah, well, that positive development and social change begins with having the father in the home, which you devils purposely moved out. So this is your creation. So now that you have this creation that you created, and the creation done gone rogue on your ass, now you got fatigue. You got black fatigue. Well, you created that. You created the YNs. Now check this out. I was just messing around with the chat GPT, messing with the chat, and I said, did America create YNs? And at first when I asked this question, I don't understand why YN. YN means, you know, your name. So I had to explain what YN was, and I'm not going to go through all of that. But this once I finally got to the root of the cause, I typed in, did America create YNs? If by YNs you're referring to the derogatory term young ninjas as a social label for young black men, then it's important to look at the broader historical and cultural context behind that. And this is why they wanted to take Jamie Foxx out, because he pretty much through that movie exposed how America created these monsters that you see out here today, both male and female. You know, YNs, you know, both the feminine and the masculine. Short answer, yes. The United States played a central role in creating and reinforcing the social and cultural conditions that led to such labeling, both directly and indirectly through systemic racism, media representation, and language. And that's what we've been saying the whole time. But magically, like Lucky Charms, you know, the only time Jake will believe something is when Esau says it. All of the things that you see, everybody now having a eureka moment or you know, an epiphany about, you know, things that are going on in the world. We've been talking about that. Elder Pastor has been talking about it 40 years. You know, the other two apostles over 35 years. You know, bishops, myself, we've been speaking about these things. But it went on deaf ears. But now if Esau says something, they'll believe it. Anyways, it says deeper context, historical origins. The dehumanization of black people dates back to slavery, and that is correct. And this is why there's something else going on right now. I can't think of the exact thing, but Trump is trying to revise, you know, all of the you know, the history. I don't, you know, right now I don't have. I seen something, a video, I think, or a thumbnail, or kind of read, or I might have listened to a little something, but he's trying to revise, you know, the books pretty much. All right, trying to, you know, erase certain shit, get rid of, because they're tired. Esau's tired of having, you know, the slavery thing and the harsh conditions that Jake has been put into. They tired of having that thing slapped in their face every fucking 5 minutes. So this is why they're doing this, because they're uncomfortable with that history and they don't want to hear about it anymore. But too goddamn bad. Did the crime, boy? You do the time, boy. inside joke. It was carried through segregation, Jim Crow laws, mass incarceration, and systemic racism. Right, because after so-called slavery and the slaves are so-called freed, which they never were, you had another stipulation in the Constitution, the 13th Amendment, which you couldn't have slavery or involuntary servitude. But if you committed a crime or you were charged with committing a crime, then you could be a slave. And that's what Esau did. He focused his attention from snatching Jacob and putting them on a plantation to snatching them up off the streets and throwing them into these different detention centers or prisons, because that was a way for them to get the same amount of work for them as cheap labor than they did when they were slaves on the plantation. It says young black men have often been stereotyped as dangerous, criminal, or hyper aggressive, and that's true, especially during the war on drugs era, 1980s and 1990s. Correct. Terms like thug, super predator, which Hillary Clinton used, right? Super predators, right? And what is that? These are all codes for what? Or slurs like the N-word have been used to frame black youth negatively. And these terms like that, when they say that, it's a code for saying young Judite, the young Judite youth. You know, media and culture. Hip hop culture, born out of black communities, has often reclaimed or reshaped derogatory terms like ninja or young ninja as forms of identity, pride, or resistance. For example, groups like YNW, Melly, or NBA Youngboy use variations of these acronyms YNW, Young Ninja World. But these are self-assigned identities, not externally imposed slurs. Yeah, but they use these clowns to push that idea of that term. Because now how all of a sudden the term YN became so popular? Still, when outsiders use those same acronyms in a derogatory context, it can cross the line into appropriation or racism. Social labeling. If people now use YN as a dismissive or derogatory shorthand to describe black youth, that would be a modern extension of old racist frameworks dressed in slang. And that's exactly what it is. It says, conclusion, America didn't invent the acronym YN, but it did create the racial dynamics and systems of oppression that make derogatory labels like this possible and often normalized. If YN is being used as a slur, it's part of a much longer story of how society has framed black youth. All right, now, so the next question I ask is, why were YNs created? If you're asking why were YNs created in the sense of why young black men have been socially labeled, stereotyped, or marginalized, whether YN is used explicitly or symbolically, the answer lies in a long history of systemic control, fear, and power in America. That's why Trump keeps saying, let's make America great again. Pretty much he's saying, let's make America white again. And that whole situation with the migrants is used pretty much to get rid of all of who they claim or deem to be undesirables, which they created. You see? It says, first, a disclaimer. The term YN as young ninjas isn't a formal or widely accepted category. It's a slang or derogatory label, not a neutral identity. So your question is really about why society created a specific narrative or stereotype around young black men. The real question, why has American society historically created harmful stereotypes and labels for young black men? Short answer, to control, criminalize, and devalue young black men, so-called black men, as a means of maintaining racial and social hierarchy. That so-called white supremacist bullshit. This is why we tell you that Christianity today is nothing more than white supremacy. All right, so this is why they set it up, to control, criminalize, and devalue, pretty much Jake. And this gives them the excuse to lock him up. to get cheap labor out of them. So on and so forth. Full breakdown. Slavery and dehumanization. From the 1600s onward, black people, so-called black people, were portrayed as less than human to justify enslavement. Young Judite males were often treated as labor units or future threats, not as full people. That's why in the Constitution it said that Jake was 3/5 of a man. Post-slavery, fear and control. After emancipation, which all it is the transfer. Emancipation means to transfer from one hand to another. You went from the plantations in the South to the plantations in the North. In the plantations in the South, you weren't getting paid shit. In the plantations in the North, you were getting paid peanuts. Plantations in the South, the master provided you with a home, a place to live, food on your table, clothes on your back. In the North, the cheap labor, you had to provide all of that, but you were still in slavery. After emancipation, Judite freedom was seen as a threat, especially young Judite men, seen as strong, mobile, and defiant. Laws like black codes and Jim Crow aimed to limit their movement, education, and autonomy, right? Because they know they didn't want, because they see these devils. One thing these devils do know is the history. And when you go back to the history of so-called Europe, they knew that during the Dark Ages, the so-called black man, the Judite man, ruled. Judah Benjamin Levi, they ruled all throughout so-called Europe. And they know this history. And they know that when Jake, is left alone and are allowed to build amongst themselves, you have a lot of intelligent Israelites out there that can come together and create something. And Esau knows that. And that's why he's constantly fucking with them. But it goes deeper than Esau. It's the Lord that's making these devils do that, because these devils, Esau, right, they are the whipping stick of the Most High. Let's go real quick. I was trying to get through this chat so we can, get into some precepts. But let's go to Psalms, the 17th chapter. Esau is the Most High's whipping stick. The Lord is waving Esau around. This is Psalms 17:8. Keep me as the apple of the eye. Hide me under the shadow of thy wings, meaning protection. From the wicked that oppress me, Esau, from my deadly enemies who compass me about, right? Because they're everywhere you go. They are enclosed in their own fat. With their mouth, they speak proudly. Yeah, they're living good, and they still talking shit. They have now compassed us in our steps. They have set their eyes bowing down to the earth, right? And shit, you have all this surveillance, and also pretty much when they're looking down on you means that they're over you. Esau is the head right now. We're at the freaking bottom. Excuse me. Like as a lion that is greedy of his prey, and as it were a young lion lurking in secret places. Arise, O Yahweh Bashem El Shai, disappoint him, cast him down, deliver my soul from the wicked, which is thy sword. So Esau is the Most High sword. From men which are thy hand, O Lord, from men of the world, which have their portion in this life, and whose belly thou fillest with thy hid treasure. They are full of children and leave the rest of their substance to their babes. Yeah, because they have generational wealth among them. Jake doesn't have that. And Esau made sure of this. All right, so let's go back. It says, number 3, the criminalization narrative. In the 20th century, especially during the war on drugs and tough on crime, eras, media, and politicians pushed the image of the Judite male criminal. Terms like super predator, remember Hillary Clinton, 1990s, and thug, and then you have Jake in the hip hop world that pushed this word thug out there. Were code for young Judite men used to justify mass incarceration and police violence, because they understood that when you get Jake in these prisons, prison is not set up to better someone, to make him a law-abiding citizen. Prisons are set up to educate criminals how to be better criminals. how not to get caught, how to, maximize their criminal behavior. It says media and pop culture. We've been saying that through the media, through these videos, the music, the movies, documentaries, and all that, they've been programming Jake. Because those of you that were around back in the 90s, up until this day, even the early 2000s, I mean, shit was bad, but the attitude of Jake wasn't as bad as it is today. I say news, movies, and music often reinforce one-dimensional portrayals of young Judite men as violent, hypersexual, lawless, angry. Right. And that's why they keep pushing that narrative. Because you keep saying something over and over again, guess what? After a while, people are going to start repeating it. It's called inculcation. To constantly impress upon the mind by constant repetition. Even when Judite artists reclaim some of these terms, an example given in hip-hop, the mainstream often misunderstood or misused them, turning self-expression into more stereotype fodder. Stereotype control. Labeling young Judite men as dangerous or lesser serves a purpose. It makes inequality feel justified. It supports systems like over-policing, school-to-prison pipeline, YNs, right? Employment discrimination, media bias. So why were YNs created? Not by accident. And this is why, if you haven't seen the movie They Clone Tyrone, you should watch it, because it gives you a blueprint as to how Esau did that. And it's not that they could actually clone somebody. It just means that the mindset of Jake in this society are all programmed to be the same. Society created the YN stereotype, even if not always with that name, to maintain racial dominance, suppress Judite agency, justify violence, neglect, or exclusion. It's a legacy of white supremacy repackaged in every generation. And that's why you always have a different term. That's why Jake, their nationality changes from like every decade or so. So now the next question I asked, would you say that the movie They Clone Tyrone reinforces the fact that young black men were created like an assembly line to be YNs? Yes. They Clone Tyrone absolutely reinforces the idea that young black men have been systematically shaped, controlled, and commodified. And all you got to do is go back and watch the videos, the music videos, the actual music after the 80s, late 80s into the 90s, the movies that they were putting out, and all of these different stereotypes, much like being produced on an assembly line. And that's pretty much what They Clone Tyrone was about, to fit a specific social role in America, because they pushed that narrative out there, these rappers and all that, to make it cool to be a scumbag. So when you are young, you're very impressionable. So when you get to a certain age, you're not well, in some cases you're not caught up by that. But when you're coming up, that is and when they use that as a standard of being cool, then that's what you want to be. You see? But that's why it says, even though I had this for later, that's why it says, let's go real quick to Exodus 23. We'll start at 1. It says, thou shalt not raise a false report, put not thine hand with the wicked to be an unrighteous witness. Thou shalt not follow a multitude to do evil, because that is evil, to be that way, to behave that way, a YN. Neither shalt thou speak in a cause to decline after many, to wrest judgment, right? Because you're supposed to do the right thing. So going back, it says, let's unpack that. All right. So let's read it again. Yes, They Clone Tyrone absolutely reinforces the idea that young black men have been systematically shaped, controlled, and commodified, much like being produced on an assembly line to fit a specific social role in America. Let's unpack that. Film overview, spoiler free. And they clone Tyrone. The story starts like a gritty street level mystery and gradually reveals a sci-fi conspiracy. A secret organization is literally cloning and controlling black people, especially young Judite men, to maintain a manufactured, oppressive social order. Because they love seeing Jake in this condition. Because the nations know that once Jake is far away from their power and acting like that, the Lord ain't dealing with Jake. And they know that when Jake gets himself together and starts coming back to the Father, then the Most High starts working. But they didn't count on the elect waking up and not falling into those categories, because the Lord said that they will not be deceived. This is a part of the deception, having Jake act the way they do. And they know that Judah is the head tribe. So if Judah's all fucked up, they know the nation can never really come. They know the nation can never come together as long as Judah's fucked up like that. But the Lord made an exception to the rules called the elect. What the film is really saying: cloning, systemic control. The literal cloning in the film represents how society replicates a specific image of black men as drug dealers, as criminals, as trapped in cycles of poverty and violence. And they didn't put the chicks, the women being prostitutes, hoes, so on and so forth. This mirrors real life, where institutions, schools, prisons, media work together to produce these outcomes, not by chance, but by design. Let's see something. What does it mean when something is done by design? When something is done by design, it means it was intentional or deliberate rather than happening by accident or chance. Yeah, because Jake didn't become this grimy by chance or by accident. It was a plan. It was a project. It implies that there was a planned purpose or intention behind the action or creation. So let's go back. So it was done by design. Tyrone as a symbol. Tyrone is a common placeholder name used in pop culture to refer to a generic black man, so-called. In the film, this reflects how individuality is erased. So everybody has a stereotype. You're either a drug dealer or you're, whatever, you're a criminal or you're a drug addict or, It says, in the film, this reflects how individuality is erased. Young black men are seen as interchangeable and disposable. Because you see what happened. One guy got killed and they bring in another one. So it's like you got a drug dealer, you got 1,000 drug dealers. One dies, another one's going to come take his place, like Honest Abe Honeycutt, right? Inside joke. Environmental programming. In the film, food, music, religion, even hair products are used to manipulate so-called black communities. See? And this is true. And that's why the stuff that you eat, put on, that's why it's important to look at those labels. I mean, we're still in hell, so there's stuff that's we can't help. But for the most part, the stuff that you put into your body alters you, messes you up, knocks off the rhythm, the natural rhythm of your body. That's why everybody's so fucked up. Got stomach problems, head problems, knee problems, all type of inflammation. And that goes back directly to the curses that the Lord said would happen. Matter of fact, let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 28, the Christians' favorite scripture that they love to hate. Verse 22, the Lord shall smite thee with a consumption and with a fever, and with an inflammation, and with an extreme burning, and with the sword, and with blasting, and with mildew, and they shall pursue thee until thou perish. So this has all to do with these different diseases. And how are these different diseases brought upon? By the diet, by the clothing that you wear, the additives that are in everything, the mixed fabrics, the GMO cotton. All of this shit contributes to all these manner of diseases, because these devils know, and that's why they make, like, if you want to buy linen sheets, they make that shit so expensive because they know most jakes can't afford that. You sleep on this, like, just one. If you just sleep on the linen, and you wake up in the morning, you'll feel more refreshed because your body is tapping it. It's like you plugging in your phone at night when it's almost dead, and it recharges. So by the morning when you get up, the phone is fully recharged. Same thing with this body. We're electric currents. There's electric currents going through our bodies, and these devils have disrupted that. So let's go back. So it says, environmental programming in the film, food, music, religion, even hair products are used to manipulate black communities. This suggests that culture itself is weaponized to keep people locked into certain roles. And that's what the cloning was about. There's an assembly line created. So it doesn't matter how many of them go, you always have somebody else to replace it. Much like how stereotypes of YNs are reinforced in real life. The assembly line metaphor, the lab scenes, because that's, that was always one of my things, I call it an assembly line. And that's why the movie They Clone Tyrone, brought that out and in beautifully, because it shows you an assembly line of Jakes being created. That's the cloning process. It says the lab scenes literally show Judite men being mass produced like products, or should I say black men, YNs. This visual metaphor ties directly into your point. Society creates YNs, not as an organic result of culture, but through deliberate design. And it's been deliberate design. There have been testimonies of individuals that went to these different, meetings of these execs, to push the direction of hip hop in the late 80s into the early 90s. And they brought it out because they wanted to push a criminal element out there, a killing each other element out there, because they had individuals that were owners, private owners of prisons that needed bodies, because bodies in prisons equal more money for them. See, and this is what this whole thing is all about. It says, what the movie is saying about America. They Clone Tyrone argues that America manufactures stereotypes of black identity, particularly of young black men, to keep systems of racism, poverty, and surveillance in place. Yep. It's not just a conspiracy thriller, it's a social critique in sci-fi form. So yes, the film aligns with the idea that young black men are shaped like products, controlled by outside forces, erased of complexity, and stuck in repeating roles unless they break the cycle. Because Jake is intelligent. Jake can be complex. But in this society, they're groomed to be some simple-minded individuals. How long, you simple ones? It asks, what if the system doesn't just neglect black people? What if it engineers them to fail? See, now, this was in the movie. And Jake has been engineered to fail. But when you bring this out, or you're a conspiracy theory, you just, see, there's this the problem. You're always making excuses. Motherfucker, can't you see what the fuck's going on around you? powerful, dark, and very real beneath the fiction, right? So then my next question was, can Isaiah 51 and 20 be used to describe these modern time YNs? Absolutely. Isaiah 51 and 20 can be interpreted as a prophetic metaphor that resonates deeply with the modern experience of young black men or YNs in marginalized communities. Isaiah 51 and 20, KJV, thy sons have fainted. They lie at the head of the streets, of all the streets, as a wild bull in a net. They are full of the fury of the Lord, the rebuke of thy power. And now, some of you that's watching, you probably believe it now that the chat said it. How many times have we been bringing this scripture out over the years, over the decades, to refer to Jake in the hood, on the corners and all that? Maybe now you believe it because chat said it. It says, breakdown in modern application. Thy sons have fainted, literal meaning. The children of Zion, Jerusalem, are exhausted, beaten down by suffering and judgment. And you see that in the streets, in these streets, right? Because here, damn, I should have read this one too. Just caught my eye. The Botch of Egypt. That's all right. So it says, I'm going to read the 16. Cursed shall thou be in the city, and cursed shall thou be in the field. And you see that in the cities, in the world. Verse 19. Cursed shall thou be when thou comest in, and cursed shall thou be when thou goest out. And that's generation after generation. Verse 20. The Lord shall send upon thee cursing, vexation, and rebuke in all that thou settest thine hand unto for to do, until thou be destroyed. And that's what the scriptures say, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. So when you see these Jakes out here, you're not looking at the people of the Lord as they should be conducted. You're looking at something else. You're looking at that strange vine, which we're going to get that scripture, right? It says, and until thou perish quickly because of the wickedness of thy doings, whereby thou hast forsaken me. Now let's go here to Jeremiah chapter 2 and verse, I'll start at 19. Thine own wickedness shall correct thee, and thy backsliding shall reprove thee. That's why we as a people are at the position at the bottom. It's not a coincidence. Know therefore and see that it is an evil thing and bitter that thou hast forsaken Yahweh Bashem El Shaddai power, and that my fear is not in thee, said the Lord Yahweh Bashem El Shaddai of hosts. Because now you see the payment of that. You see that disobedience leads to punishment. And this, what you see in these different inner cities, in these hoods, barrios, is a direct curse that was put upon us by the Lord Yahweh Bashem El Shaddai for our disobedience. For of old time I have broken thy yoke and burst thy bands, and thou saidest, I will not transgress. No, Lord, please, if you deliver me, I won't sin anymore. When upon every high hill and under every green tree thou wanderest playing the harlot, right? And you continue to go down that route. The Lord delivered you, and boom, right back at it. So the Lord said, okay, I got something for you this time. That's why he pretty much, let me see. So he pretty much took his name away from us, and his son's name away from us, and also took who we are away from us. I know this one, but Zephaniah 1 and 8. And it shall come to pass in that day that the Lord in the day of the Lord's sacrifice, that I will punish the princes and the king's children, and all such as are clothed with strange apparel. Now there, the holy flesh. Okay. So that strange apparel is what? The way Jake is today, the way that they conduct themselves, the way that they did that grimy, gritty, funky spirit that Jake is in out here. Jeremiah 11 and 15. What hath my beloved to do in mine house? seeing she hath wrought lewdness with many, and the holy flesh is passed from thee. And that's why you see the YN syndrome out here. It says, when thou didst evil, then thou rejoicest. Right, because another one, which we're gonna come back to this in Jeremiah chapter 4 and verse 22. For my people is foolish, they have not known me. They are Sodom's children, and they have none understanding. They are wise to do evil, but to do good they have no knowledge. And that's what we just read here in Jeremiah 11:15. What has my beloved to do in my house, seeing she has wrought lewdness with many? Right, here it is. You did all this wickedness. You like that slut that slapped some other man down, wiped her mouth, and came home to her husband like she didn't do anything wrong. And the holy flesh is passed from thee. That's why you became that degenerate plant of a strange vine. That's why you became the wild olive tree. When thou doest evil, then thou rejoicest. That's the only time you're happy and content, when you're doing some form of type of wickedness. So Jeremiah 2:21, yet I had planted thee a noble vine, wholly a right seed. How then art thou turned into the degenerate plant of a strange vine unto me? So let's go there. And let's go to the word degenerate. Degenerate plant. The word there is sawar. Sawar, which is degenerate. See, deteriorated, turned off. So the man that wandereth out of the way of understanding shall remain in the congregation of the dead. So your righteous light was turned off. So you're walking around in a wicked state, in an unrecognizable state to the Most High, because the holy flesh passed from you. You have these strange apparel on you. This is not who I brought up. Who the fuck are these people? I did everything. I made sure everything was done perfectly. You didn't follow the instructions, I don't recognize you. So turned off, deteriorated, meaning falling apart. And that's what you see. You see Jake out here, you in your mind, you're like, damn. You know, you see why Esau says there's no way that you people could be the people of the Most High. Right? So that was the word degenerate, sawar. And then the word strange here is the word nakarya, which is the actual word used for actual nation. So Jake became like another nation that the Most High does not recognize, with that strange flesh, those strange apparel, the holy flesh being passed from you. So you became a degenerate plant of a strange vine unto the Most High. For though thou wash thee with nitre and take thee much soap, yet thine iniquity is marked before me, saith the Lord Yahweh Bashem Yahushai. Yeah, and there's nothing you could do. The only ones that have any hope are the elect. And the Lord will wake them up out of that degenerate state and bring them back to his holy children. So going back here, right? So let's read this again. Thy sons have fainted, literal meaning. The children of Zion, Jerusalem are exhausted, beaten down by suffering and judgment. Modern parallel. Many young black men are emotionally, spiritually, and physically exhausted. Why? Because the way they were brought up in a single parent home, which they were brought up under their mother. And even in the movie, Boys in the Hood, they show you the difference between men, young Jakes brought up by their mother and young Jakes brought up by their father. You had two different outcomes in most cases. It says worn out by systemic oppression, poverty, over policing, and lack of opportunity. Yeah. It says the word fainted symbolizes hopelessness or the loss of direction. And that's what Jake has. Jake has a loss of direction. And that's why, let's go to Isaiah chapter 5. Loss of direction, boy. Woo. This is the book of Isaiah chapter 5 and verse where is it? Verse 13. Therefore, my people are gone into captivity because they have no knowledge. That's why you're in a hopeless state. That's why you have fainted, because you have no knowledge. My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. And you see what this destruction did, how degenerate and how low Jake has become. And their honorable men are famished, and their multitude dried up with thirst. That's right. So let's go back. It says the word fainted symbolizes hopelessness or the loss of direction, a condition that's often visible in neglected communities. It says they lie at the head of all the streets. In ancient context, this suggests young men are found on every street corner, lost or idle. And this is what it is. You young Jakes, you're lost and you're idle. Because you are not, when you were young, the father had chores for the sons and he had chores for the daughter. You were always busy because you were being trained on how to run a household properly, and the different what's the word I'm looking for, the different responsibilities that came with adulthood. But these young Jakes they're just all day, they're sleeping all day, wake up eating Captain Crunch, playing video games, getting high, hanging out. They're idle. And that's why there was a law on a rebellious son and what you were supposed to do with that rebellious son. Modern parallel. This easily evokes the street culture associated with inner city environments. Young men are on corners, often policed or criminalized, viewed by society as loitering or dangerous. It says it's also symbolic of being stuck in place, visible yet powerless. And the Lord said, "There shall be no might." Let's get to that. Deuteronomy 20:32. Thy sons and thy daughters shall be given unto another people, and thine eyes shall look and fail with longing for them all the day long, and there shall be no might in thine hand. Meaning you ain't gonna be able to get out that situation. And this is echoed all throughout Deuteronomy 28, from the 16th verse down, on how you won't be able to deliver yourself, or no one else will be able to deliver you, or buy you, or redeem you. All right, let's go back. So it's also symbolic of being stuck in place, visible yet powerless, present but abandoned, because you have no knowledge, and you can't grow spiritually if you have no knowledge, because you're going to be stuck in idle, and that stuck in idle, that stagnation, you're not going to learn anything. You're just going to be wallowing in that shit. That's why you have 60-year-old Jakes out there on the corner that came up with peers that are doctors and lawyers and such, and you have some of them old ninjas, gray hairs and everything, fucked up knees, back and all that, still hanging out in the corners, doing the same shit they were doing when they were teenagers. It's a vicious cycle, man. But this is the cost of being disobedient. But now the elect are on the come up out of this bullshit. As a wild bull in a net, a powerful image, a strong animal trapped, thrashing, angry, but ultimately caught. Yeah, because Jake is caught. They can't. It's nothing that they can do to get out of that situation. They're strong, but they're trapped. So what do? They show aggression against each other. It says this line perfectly captures the condition of young black men seen by society as aggressive, or dangerous, but in reality, they are trapped in systems they don't create. So they were programmed that way. And they were programmed that way on purpose to be able to later on justify locking them up or getting rid of them or getting out of here. Now Trump talking about deporting every goddamn body. It says the net could be systemic racism, mass incarceration, underfunded education, or generational poverty. The wild bull isn't naturally violent. It's reacting to being ensnared, right? Full of the fury of the Lord, the rebuke of thy power. In the original text, this fury is tied to divine judgment. Israel suffering because of disobedience. And that's why these YNs are suffering. But it can also be seen as a righteous anger or the deep rage that comes from oppression. Well, the scriptures say, surely oppression maketh the wise man mad. Modern interpretation could link this to the anger of black youth, often seen as dangerous or irrational, but which actually stems from centuries of inherited trauma, injustice, and systemic neglect. So this is chat. So can Isaiah 51:20 describe YNs? Yes, profoundly so. It mirrors how strong, capable young men have been drained by social burdens, confined by systems that see them as threats, misunderstood in their pain and rage, and left exposed in public spaces with no real protection or direction. You see? Because this is how you portrayed everything on TV, and this is what this is the product of it. No? What is a product of the environment? A product of the environment generally refers to ideas that a person's characteristics, behaviors, and beliefs are largely shaped by their surroundings, including their upbringings, culture, social interactions, and experiences. Exactly. It says this concept highlights the influence of the environment on an individual's development, suggesting that where and how a person grows up significantly impacts who they become. So going back, final thoughts. Isaiah 51:20 doesn't just reflect on the past, it prophetically echoes the present. For those looking through a spiritual or liberation theology lens, it's a cry for justice, not just a description of punishment. Right, and the Most High is jacking you up, and you still aren't making your call to the Lord. You still ain't crying out to Yahweh Bashem Yahushai. Isaiah chapter 1 and verse 2, hear, O heavens, and give ear, O earth, for the Lord hath spoken. I have nourished and brought up children, and they have rebelled against me. And that's it. So it says, the ox knoweth his owner, and the ass his master's crib, but Israel doth not know, my people doth not consider. Yeah. And there was a video, I think it was on Instagram or something that a brother had sent me. And the brother Quanawath from the New York camp, he sent me this video of this bull that was with his master, but his master was drunk out of his mind, and the bull was behind him pushing him to take him home. And I heard, they were speaking Portuguese, so I kind of picked up a couple of words, and then one of them said, it sounded like he was asking, like, where's the bull taking him? And the other one said dormir, which means to sleep, So even the ox or the bull know who their owner is and where their home is. But Jake doesn't know. They don't even consider. It says, sinful nation, the people laden with iniquity. Right, because you're pickled. You're overlaid with wickedness. A seed of evildoers, children that are corrupters. See, YNs. Corrupters. Let's look this up. Corrupters. The word there is shachath. To destroy. See, they're destroyers, corrupt, to go to ruin, decay, that degenerate plant. To be marred, which means to be destroyed, to be spoiled, be corrupted. be injured, be ruined, be rotted. So Jake, from the divine, holy vine they became putrefied. So it says, they have provoked the Holy One of Israel unto anger. They have gone away backward. Um, it says, why should you be stricken anymore? You will revolt more and more. The whole head is sick and the whole heart faint. So all of them, from the head to the bottom, from the sole of the foot even unto the head, there is no soundness in it. Yeah, no soundness, because you don't have anything to guide you, wisdom wise, knowledge, wisdom, and understanding wise, because of your environment. And then when you try to bring it out, that environment fights against, the solution. You have a solution, but the environment teaches you to fight against that solution. In it, but wounds and bruises and putrefying sores. You see that Jake is just fucked up. They have not been closed, neither bound up, neither mollified with ointment. Right, because there was nothing put. And what is the bounding up, mollified, and the closing? The words of Yahweh Bashem El Shai, which are a medicine, an ointment that is used to clean. And that's why Yahweh Shai told the disciples, now are you clean through the words which I have spoken. So let's jump down to the 16th verse. It says, wash you, make you clean. Put away the evil of your doings from before mine eyes. Cease to do evil. Learn to do well. Seek judgment. Relieve the oppressed. Judge the fatherless. Plead for the widow. And this is the way you turn around from that. This is how you become a new man, being washed from all them old ways. Come now and let us reason together, saith the Lord Yahweh Bashem El Shai. So you come back to Yahweh Bashem El Shai, though your sins be as scarlet. Scarlet is red, which symbolizes crime. They shall be as white as snow, because the Lord will forgive you. Though they be red like crimson, they shall be as wool, meaning clean. If ye be willing and obedient, see, you shall eat the good of the land. But if you refuse and rebel, you shall be devoured with the sword, for the mouth of the Lord Yahweh Bashem El Shai has spoken. And that's why Jacob's trouble is coming. Jacob's trouble is coming, and it's going to be fierce. It's going to be harsh. It's going to be hard. Let's see something. Jeremiah 4. We read some of this earlier, but let's read it again. Jeremiah 4:18. Thy way and thy doings have procured these things unto thee. See, this is why we find ourselves in this condition. This is thy wickedness, because it is bitter, because it reacheth unto thine heart. Right? Because give me any plague but the plague of the heart. Because once the mind is all fucked up, that's it. There's nothing else you could do, because that's the control mechanism for the rest of the body. So Judah is fucked up. So the rest of the body, the rest of the tribes are fucked up. But this is the solution. The Lord set up his men, his prophets, to build all this thing, build back the tabernacles of David, as in the days of old. My bowels, I am pained at my very heart. My heart maketh a noise in me. I cannot hold my peace, because thou hast heard, O my soul, the sound of the trumpet, the alarm of war. Destruction upon destruction is cried, for the whole land is spoiled. Suddenly are my tents spoiled, and my curtains in a moment. And this goes back to the Babylonian Empire. You could apply it today. How long shall I see the standard and hear the sound of the trumpet? Right, the continual sounding of the truth coming out, warning Jake over and over again. So once the warning stopped, judgment drops. I believe the brother yesterday said he wanted to do a lesson on that. For my people is foolish; they have not known me. They are Sodom's children, and they have none understanding. And that's why Jake is in the condition that they're in. They are wise to do evil, but to do good they have no knowledge. And we see how Jake's mindset got to where it's at. You know, through constant repetition. You know, showing the same shit, pushing that same narrative, and you see the product that came out of it, and it's nothing nice. So much so that the ones that created it are tired of it. They're fatigued with it. Ain't that about a bitch? You're fatigued of your own creation. Hot damn. All right, so with that, I pray that you brothers and few sisters have been edified. To the next time I say, Shalom.